Have you ever listened carefully on a summer evening and heard a distant train whistle?
Yeah!
Do you like to play with model trains? And build tracks that go to imaginary places?
Yeah!
It's fun to play with model trains. How would you like to ride on a real one?
Yeah! Welcome to the Big Train Trip!
Our adventure begins here in Toronto, Canada. This is Union Station, the city's main railroad depot. Before our trip, we'll spend the night across the street at the Royal York Hotel. It was built for railroad passengers almost 80 years ago.
Wow!
Hi guys, how are you?
How are you today?
Good. Checking into the Royal York Hotel, are you? Yeah.
It's a really old hotel with restored rooms and neat old furniture. It has lots of cool new things, too. This is a great place to stay on the night before our big trip.
Where will we be going?
We'll be going all the way across Canada to the city of Vancouver. From Toronto, our train will head west through many places with interesting names, like Sudbury, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Jasper, and then on to Vancouver. That's a distance of almost 2,800 miles, or almost 4,500 kilometers. We'll be on the train for 3 days and 3 nights. Early in the morning, before we get up, our train is put together. The different cars are brought from the train yard by a locomotive, called a switching engine. The yardman signals the engineer to make sure the cars line up. Then they connect and lock together. It's the morning of the big trip. Our train, called the Canadian, is already at the station. It is operated by Via Rail, the Canadian Passenger Rail Company. Time for us to head to the train. The bellman takes our bags across the street to Union Station. The station is a very busy place. More than 50 trains come in and out of this station every day. Throughout the station, speakers keep passengers informed of when trains arrive and when they are boarding.
All aboard. Pouvons-nous avoir votre attention, s'il vous plaît?
In Canada, they make announcements in French and in English. In the center of the room is a big board that lists all the trains and where they're going.
Wow, that's a lot of trains.
Every train has a number. Our train is number 1, going to Vancouver.
I see it.
The board shows that our train is on track number 6. The bellman from the hotel hands off our bags to the red caps.
Red caps?
They handle all the passenger bags at the station. Can you tell how they got their name? The red cap picks up our bags and brings them all the way to the train. First, he goes through the main station, then up an escalator to the tracks. And all the way to the right car. When the train is in the station, the red caps stay very busy. Meanwhile, in the baggage area, crews drive large carts full of baggage and freight through the long underground hallways to the train. They take this special elevator right up to the tracks.
There's the train.
They drive to the baggage car and load everything inside.
Wow, there's a lot of room in the baggage car.
In another part of the station, there are large refrigerated rooms where food is stored. Workers organize the food for all the trains that will leave today. They collect the food that will be needed for the first part of our trip. Meals and drinks are loaded onto carts and then taken out to the train. This is Doug Briscoe. He is the engineer for the first part of our trip. When he arrives at the station, he stops at the briefing room and signs in. He also looks up information on track conditions to make sure we'll have a smooth ride. When Doug has finished checking in, he heads out to the locomotive. After he checks out the cab, Doug walks around the two locomotives and inspects the brakes and the other systems.
I basically go through the cab, the lead units, to make sure the number lights are working. I'll go back to the second unit as well and make sure everything is in its proper sequence because it's a trailing unit.
When he's checked everything out, Doug gets back in the locomotive to wait for departure.
What kind of locomotive is that?
Our train will be pulled by two F-40 locomotives. They are powerful machines that run on diesel engines. Each locomotive weighs 85 tons, and its fuel tank holds as much fuel as 80 cars.
Wow!
The F-40 has a large diesel engine that drives an electrical generator. This supplies electricity that runs large electric motors located in the wheel area called the trucks. These electric motors turn the wheels that pull the train. In the station agent plays the boarding announcement.
May we have your attention, please? Via train is now boarding passengers en route to Washington, Sudbury, Cape, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Edmonton, and Vancouver at gate number 6. Only passengers with valid...
Passengers in the waiting room get ready to board the train. All aboard! Passengers show their tickets to the service agents and head up the escalator to their assigned cars.
121A and B.
When everyone is on board, the signal is given. Doug releases the brake and moves the throttle. We're on our way. The best view is from the dome car at the end of the train. As we leave the station, we pass under Toronto's giant CN Tower. From the dome car, we can see our engines way up front.
Goodbye, Toronto.
We leave the city behind and pass train cars, factories, and lots of backyards. A train trip is a great time to just sit and let the world pass by. Before long, we are moving across the countryside. It's winter and everything is covered with snow. Lots more than in the city. Up in the cab, Doug and his second engineer, Bill, watch the tracks and look for signals. Doug has always loved trains.
My dad was an engineer and my grandfather was an engineer. His father was an engineer with CPR, Canadian Pacific Railway. My mother worked for the railway for 20 years. Yeah, the whole family has just loved trains. My dad used to take me all the time. I thought it was just great. It was that power, you know, the horsepower. I like it. I've been doing it for 27 years and I love it. I look forward to going to work every day.
Doug has been driving this same route for many years, and he's made lots of friends along the way.
All along the route, you've got your favorites. Everybody comes out to wave, and there's a certain guy, and you know, you toot, 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 and they come out, and yeah, you have your favorites. And the smaller towns seem to be more receptive to the trains.
On our trip across Canada, we'll stop at more than 25 towns and cities. As our train pulls into Sudbury Junction, Reggie watches from the baggage car. At this stop, we have to wait for more than 30 minutes so passengers can get off the train and stretch their legs.
Be careful.
Some passengers go into town. Others walk up and look at the engines. And some even have snowball fights. The train cannot leave earlier than its scheduled time because it shares the track with other trains, and each train must stay on schedule.
All aboard!
Along the route, Doug keeps a lookout for speed limit signs and signals. At some places, he has to slow down because of curves or track conditions. On the speed limit signs, the top number is for passenger trains and the bottom number is for freight trains. Doug calls to report his speed change and his location. This is the CN Control Center in Montreal. Dispatchers monitor all the tracks to make sure trains are running safely. They are like air traffic controllers for the railroad. Every track is monitored, and the computer shows the location of every train. Each track section is shown in color. Red means there's a train on that track, green shows the route of the train, and blue means that no train can be in that section. Dispatchers work around the clock to keep in touch with the trains.
OK, comme ça, il y avait juste un wagon.
We have a restricting signal on the Holland Woodward.
Doug gets a restricting signal that shows he has to pull over at the siding.
OK, with an after on 45.
Look, there's a red freight train on our track.
Doug slows down and we pull over on the siding to let the freight train go by. Doug recognizes the engineers on the freight train and calls them to ask them about the track ahead.
Hey, Kevin, was there anything close behind you?
104 is 2 blocks behind us there.
About every 30 miles, there is a laser sensor on the track that checks the temperature of the wheel bearings on the locomotive. If they are too hot, it sounds an alarm. If not, then it gives the okay. Listen. If the bearings are too hot, it might mean there is a safety problem. Dispatchers also see the temperature readouts on their computers. Here we come to a railroad crossing where the train crosses the road. Listen.
The sound changes. Why?
That's called the Doppler effect. It's when sound comes from something that is moving. Sound moves like waves in the ocean. High sounds travel in short waves, and low sounds travel in long waves. But when you are moving toward the sound, you hear the waves closer together, so the sound sounds higher. And as soon as you move away from the sound, the waves you hear are longer, so the sound is lower. Now listen again. As we approach the signal, it sounds high, and as we move away, it sounds lower. Doug loves driving the Canadian.
It's great. You got the countryside just moving, so you got the best seat in the house. You've got that power. We've got 2 engines, so it's 6,000 horsepower, and there's a lot of horses there to haul around those coaches.
With the sun low in the sky, you can see the train's shadow on the canyon walls.
This is the first call for dinner in the dining car. 1 car forward. C'est le premier appel pour le dîner dans la voiture restaurant.
The dining car is like a giant restaurant on wheels. Passengers eat dinner and watch the country move by outside the giant glass windows. This is Lloyd. He takes care of people in the dining car.
I like meeting people. I like the people. I like the motion of the train.
In the dining car, you can order from a menu of lots of good things.
I've never met a child yet that doesn't like a train. They just love it. I'd say to any young person, take a trip on the train.
On one end of the dining car is the kitchen. Here, Chef Gilles works to prepare all the food. It's different from a regular kitchen because it's always moving. During dinner time, the kitchen in the dining car is a very busy place. Everyone in the dining crew pitches in to help. Meals on the train are always fun. Remember, save room for dessert. While we are at dinner, Wolfgang changes our room from a day room to a sleeping room. The beds fold out of the walls and the chairs slide under the beds. Our room can sleep 4 people with 2 bunk beds.
The top bunks are the most fun.
As the sun goes down on our first day, we head across the frozen prairie. Outside, it's below 0. But inside the train, it's nice and warm. After a busy day, we return to a room to go to sleep. Sleeping on a train is fun because your bed moves back and forth with the movement of the train. All through the night, the train continues west toward Vancouver. It's morning of our second day. Some people are still a little tired, while some use a nice shower to wake up. It's a great time to play with toy trains. In the club car, you can grab a quick breakfast if you don't want to go to the dining car. While we're out of our room, Wolfgang puts the beds away and sets up the game table. It's fun to walk up and down the halls and between the cars. But remember to be careful. The club car is the very last car on the train. It has a dome up top for the best view. Down below in the snack bar, you can watch videos.
He also performed surgery on a sick bird.
In the sitting area, you can play games or check out the times in different cities.
Why are they different times?
The Earth is divided into 24 time zones. Each time zone is 1 hour different. So when it's noon in Toronto, it's 9 a.m. in Vancouver, because it is 3 time zones away. The dome is the perfect place to look at the scenery. Sometimes we pass close to a highway. From a car, this is what our train would look like. On clear track like this, the Canadian usually travels at about 60 miles per hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? This is your first call for lunch in the dining car. Your first call for lunch in the dining car.
The passengers enjoy another meal as the day goes by. Throughout the trip, we pass through train yards that are full of elk. In the winter, they like to stay around grain cars and eat wheat that spills on the ground. The weather constantly changes. Sometimes there's a snowstorm and everything looks dark and cloudy. Other times, we pass by long freight trains.
Wow, that's close.
On the second night, we head across the Canadian wheat fields. That's a grain elevator. It's used to store wheat that will be loaded onto trains. As the second day turns to night, our train rounds a curve, and in the distance, we can see the lights of Winnipeg.
There's people ice skating.
It gets dark early when we're this far north. Time to head to bed. Good night, wheat fields.
Good night, Winnipeg.
Before the sun comes up, we can watch the prairie go by without getting out of bed. During the third day, the train stops in Edmonton to drop off passengers. There's also new supplies of food for Chef Gilles in the dining car. The train slowly climbs the foothills. Dennis is our engineer for this leg of the trip, which will take us over the Rocky Mountains. The Trans-Canadian Railroad spans the entire length of Canada, over 4,000 miles. It was a big job to build this railroad. Think of what it was like over 100 years ago. Building the railroad took over 5 years. More than 35,000 people laid the tracks, built the bridges, and blasted through the mountains. When the job was complete, the railroad connected the country together. But the early days steam engines couldn't pull dining cars up the steep mountains. So the Canadian Pacific Railroad built rest stops along the way, where passengers could get off and eat. Soon these rest stops grew into hotels. Today, these hotels are still open, like the Royal York in Toronto, the Queen Elizabeth in Montreal, and the giant Banff Springs Hotel. Now, the train enters Jasper National Park, gateway to the Canadian Rockies. Dennis has to be careful because there is wildlife everywhere.
Look, there's another passenger train.
That's the other Canadian, heading east from Vancouver, on its way to Toronto. It's called Train Number 2. When we pass around Jasper Lake, look back and you can see the whole train behind us. As we pull into the Jasper station, Clint's second engineer, Ted, jumps out to turn the switch. This brings us into the station. At Jasper, the train stops for over an hour. For many passengers, this is their final destination. For others, it's a nice break in the day.
May I have your attention, please? VIA passengers requesting shuttle service to Jasper Park Lodge may present themselves at the VIA ticket office.
There's a railroad hotel here called the Jasper Park Lodge, right in the middle of the park. The rooms are in little lodges spread out in a forest. Back at the station, train crews stay busy. Workers clean the dome windows of the club car, and maintenance crews check out the locomotive to make sure everything is working fine.
How do they fix the locomotive?
When trains need repair, they come here, to the VIA Maintenance Center in Montreal. This building is so long that it can hold 6 trains with 10 passenger cars each. Trains enter the center and go on special elevated tracks that let crews work under the trains. There's a lot of work to do. Every 5 years, locomotives are overhauled. Workers take them completely apart and then rebuild them like new.
That locomotive is empty inside.
There's the diesel engine. It's been taken out to be repaired. There's the generator. Those are the trucks for the locomotive with the electric motors. When it's time to repair the trucks and wheels on a passenger car, crews lift the entire car off the trucks so they can move them to the workshop. Fixing trains is a big job that requires special tools. The tool shed keeps track of all the tools in the maintenance center. The wheels on a train hold a lot of weight, so they wear down and get flat sections. This machine makes them just like new. This is called turning the wheels. When the wheels are finished, they are put back on the cars. This is a big job because the steel train wheels are as tall as a 3-year-old, and the wheel set weighs over 2,000 pounds.
Wow!
Every part of the train gets repaired, even the seats. The Canadian leaves Jasper and begins a slow climb into the mountains. During the trip, the train will pass over the peaks and cross the Continental Divide. As we climb into the mountains, passengers enjoy the view from the dome car.
Look at that mountain!
That's Mount Robson, the tallest mountain in Canada. It is covered with snow all year long, and it's usually hidden by fog and clouds. Our train continues through the mountains into the night. Tonight, the train will go through the mountain's pass and cross the Continental Divide.
What's that?
The Continental Divide is an imaginary line that follows the tops of a mountain range. All rivers on one side flow toward the east, and all rivers on the other side flow toward the west. As the daylight comes, we approach our destination, the city of Vancouver. It is a lot warmer here, and there is no snow. It's the morning of a workday, and there's lots of traffic. There are even commuter trains right on the tracks next to ours. Vancouver Station is the end of the line, so the engineer has to back the train into the station. The second engineer watches from the club car and talks to the engineer with a walkie-talkie. When the train comes to a stop, baggage crews and service attendants bring all the baggage out of the cars and to the station. Our trip is over. On the train, we crossed a whole continent and gone through 3 time zones. The city of Vancouver is located right on the Pacific Ocean. It has a beautiful waterfront. You can watch seaplanes land from Stanley Park and see a view of the whole downtown. Nearby is the famous Whistler Ski Resort, a perfect place to learn how to ski.
Wait, guys? Are you guys feeling all warm now?
It even has a kids' snow castle. Downtown, at the Hotel Vancouver, there is a special ice cream buffet just for kids.
Put it right in the middle there. Beautiful. He's an artist.
Back at the yard, the Canadian goes through a train wash. This machine scrubs every car to make them look like new. Maintenance teams work inside to make sure everything's ready. Tomorrow our train will head east on the long trip back to Toronto. Once again, the train will pass mountains and wheat fields and river gorges. So next time you hear a distant train whistle, just think, it might be people taking a big train trip.
Just don't play near the railway tracks, kids. That's got to be the big one. Guys, stay away from the trains.
how you can find out more information about topics mentioned in this video. Use your computer and look up these websites. And remember to check out the Little Mammoth website at www.littlemammoth.com.
Kids have questions. They need knowledge, adventure, wonder, and fun. That's why there's the Big Adventure series from Little Mammoth Media. Videos that can turn your VCR into an answering machine. The Big Adventure series takes kids where they really want to go. Everywhere. Let's go! How about aboard an aircraft carrier?
It's longer than 3 football fields. It would be the 3rd tallest building in New York City.
520, clear forward. 528, clear.
Wow!
Up close with an active volcano.
Cool!
It looks like another planet.
That's because this is what it looks like after a volcano erupts. Or on a plane.
Wow! That's Teresa Stokes. She has one of the most amazing jobs you'll ever see. She's a wing walker.
A wing walker?
You can see everything. There's no airplane around you to block the view.
Go behind the scenes at a real zoo.
Peaches is on a diet. She only gets 13 pounds of hay, 6 pounds of grain, and 13 pounds of fruits and vegetables.
Or a famous aquarium. Yeah!
Hey, Knucklehead, how you doing?
The fish love to be fed, and let the divers know it.
Broccoli!
Or take a trip on a jumbo jet to Switzerland.
This here 121 Heavy, contact departure 119.3. Good night.
On a boat. On a plane.
On a train through wild terrain.
In a sub.
At the zoo.
How they launched the space shuttle, too.
Why zebras have stripes.
How plumbers fit pipes. Giant booms.
Amazing room.
Big paper.
Big fish.
The best part ever.
All the adventures you wish.
This is big. The biggest, best adventure series for kids who are looking for some. The Big Adventure series from Little Mammoth Media. Everyone could use a big adventure. Order the whole series of Big Adventure videos. Collect them all. Ask for them at your video store, or you can order off our cool website at www.littlemammoth.com. Order now.